The following program is rated PG. Parental guidance is recommended.
Hi, welcome to today's session of Balance. We're going to talk about failure, and I'd like to jump into Millie to take us through the session.
What you last said, yeah.
Yes.
So Winston Churchill said that failure is not fatal, or some version of that. I'm paraphrasing, and so it's okay to fail from what we got from that. So maybe, I don't know, when you're thinking back to like how you've lived your life, like what have you understood about failure now in this our big age? What have you understood about failure coming this far, and how have you overcome like a failure you consider you had in your life? So maybe
I think for me, you know, there's this notion that when you have failed, it's your fault. Like failure and fault sort of come, you know, side by side. But I think there's good failure because there are some things that have come out as a result of me failing. Like I've learned how to do things better. I've learned how to process things better out of my failure. And so I feel that even as a society that we need to shift our thinking and our perspective around the issues of failure, because it's not all failure that is bad. It's not all intentional, so to speak, that, you know, I just woke up today and I was like, I'm not going to follow this procedure. I'm just going to do my own things, and it's resulted obviously in maybe a blunder somewhere. But there is failure that comes about as when you are experimenting stuff, and out of that whole experimentation process, then you get to discover
something good.
Something good is born that will save you and save you and the whole headache and others, the whole headache of what it is that I had to go through. So that would be my perspective on it.
So for me, I start with childhood. As a child in school, I always struggled. You know, I've come to school because I don't know.
Yes.
And then when I make a mistake, the teacher beats me or sends me out of the class.
What is that?
So I'll be like, and you know, the teacher would be so strong about, you should not have gotten it wrong. And I'm thinking, but I came to school because I did not know. So, so for me, the process needed to be there. I needed to be encouraged. And so I've struggled with that feeling of, why is it wrong to fail? You know, people deem it like, and failure is, you know, you've gotten wrong in maths, you've gotten the timetable wrong, and you've just learnt it. You know, it's a new concept. You've just learnt it. So in my head, I'm thinking as a child, so what was the teacher expecting me to do? Come knowing the timetable. So
I've learnt at home.
I started with that struggle since childhood. At that time, of course, I couldn't place the word failure, but I'd be feeling like, why is the teacher beating me for getting wrong in maths? I've come to learn. I mean, and actually, for me, I'd have looked at it the other way around. The teacher failed me because they were supposed to teach me.
Translate information into
translate it and make me understand. So when they're beating me, I'm struggling with them, and I'm thinking, teacher, no, I should be beating you.
Right. I think, and that's where the fear of failure then now comes in, because you find if this is what you're being punished, there's a negative sort of consequence that is associated with not getting it right, then the fear of failure then begins to be, you know, instilled in the child. So you find that you don't want to try new things because you're like, I don't want to get beaten, I don't want to be, you know, now we are adults, we don't want to get judged, and you don't want to be seen as though you don't understand what it is that you're on about. But you're right to somehow bring up how childhood experiences does affect how you look at things and how you bring about lots of, you know, experimenting things even as you get older, you know.
I think for me now, at my big age, obviously, you know, we've gone through the valleys and the hills. I think now I am more, it's cushioned in a nice way, say more rational, more realistic, but really you're fearing failure. So I fear to start new things because I don't know how it will end. And I'm like, do I have money for this experiment? You know, whether it's a business that I want to venture into, that's an experiment. It could work, it could fail. And those are, you know, those are realities. So I'm kind of like, hey, do I have 50K to burn? Again, it's fear of failure, or fear of loss. You could put on something and then people laugh at it or say, it's just a regurgitation of things we've seen around. I don't want to look like other people. So again, that judgment and that, you know, so that kind of because also if you have failed before, you're traumatized. I have failed before, so I do carry trauma of failure. And it's not because I failed because I wanted to, it is what it is. But then again, I'm like, I don't want to go through what I went through the other time. So you have to like coach yourself out of that fear and try again. and try again and tell yourself, I have more experience now, I have more networks now, I have better friends now, but it's still so difficult. And so I think we also still have to address that from childhood is that fear of being punished, and in adulthood you're like, can I really take it psychologically if I failed again? So
and I think you also learn as you grow, because the way we used to say, like, pray is push until it was, I think, prayer or something. No, push, it was until something happens.
Yes, pray until
and so
something
fear,
happens.
pray until something happens. And then for fear, it's false evidence appearing real.
Yes.
And so we, that's why it's usually called irrational, because it doesn't make sense. It's like if you've studied for something and you've learned something, it's like, why are you afraid to fail until you do it?
Yes.
So I think those are the things we need to learn. It's like, if in our past we didn't know something, but then we learned it, why are we so scared to do it again? It shouldn't be that hard.
It's usually two things that make you scared. One, it's because your brain wants to safeguard you, because failure is, as you said, has an element of trauma. And when trauma happens, the brain wants to keep you safe. So there's that element, and so you don't want to try new things because your past experience was failure. But then there's also that element of the childhood, you've grown up, you've been told you shouldn't fail, you shouldn't fail, you shouldn't get maths wrong. Even think about even us as parents, when we tell our child wash the dishes, very simple task, and then they don't wash them, they leave the soap, or sometimes they wash their hands and leave soap. You really criticize them. So what does that tell them? You're telling them it's wrong to leave soap, it's wrong to, yet you should be encouraging them. Next time, put a little bit more water. Right. So it's the way we handle failure, even as adults. So even the adults in our lives, how did they handle our failures? So that meant that is what we learned, because remember, everything is a learning process. And so now, as you have correctly put it, Esther, that as adults now, our fear is being judged. Am I sitting properly? Am I sitting correctly? Did I hold the glass wine correctly? And it's interesting. It's in the day-to-day things. And I tell people that if you fail in small tasks, if you keep feeling because it's feeling like you failed, you'll feel like a total failure. Equally, if you succeed in small tasks, you feel like a total success. And this one is more very practical. If someone has ever experienced after an accident, when you have to be rehabilitated, they never tell you take 10 steps. You start with 1 step. Take 1 step, and they're so excited. They're like, yeah, you've taken 1 step, Esther. Because they know that every time they cheer you on for the small success, you will eventually get to the real success. And so equally, if you feel like every day you're failing, you feel like I'm a total failure. So that it's an element of so many things. And so if you look at your personal life, you probably see where you felt like a failure, and that has repeatedly stopped you. Maybe it's in your dressing, maybe it's in the way you talk. Someone told you don't talk like that or don't sing like that. So if we all were to give our personal experiences, I'm sure we have something we would say where we felt like we failed and we don't want to try it again to keep ourselves safe.
But let me throw a spanner in the works. Do you also feel like success is overrated? What do you go back to school to do? It's like to get more successful, right? But when do you, I think you want to be associated with the people who win, who are successful, who are all these things. You don't go like, this guy failed. Let me go, let's go cheer this guy up and see, what lessons did he learn, sort of an approach. It's always, and I guess that's why education is becoming more and more and more expensive, but it's sort of like, you can never achieve it. It's like you're chasing a moving target. Yeah, because if it's how to be successful, 50 ways to be successful. We've read it. Now you don't. Then it reaches a point you're like, I don't even know myself anymore. Let me start all over again because this success thing, we have to go for it. And I feel, just as a mom, when I look at my child, because my child has a disability, so I really relate to what you're saying, because those 1, 2, 3 steps for us is success.
Big deal.
Yeah, it's such a big deal. It's what we celebrate in our home, that she's finally held a spoon, she's feeding herself. What is normal in the outside world, in our world, we're like, this is a bash. It needs to be a national holiday.
I like what you
because
said,
it's not celebrated.
I like what you said, because for myself, I had to have a come to Jesus moment where now I define success for myself. What do I feel like I have done well in, and what do I feel feel like I should really, you know, someone else would not have come back from this, but I did come back from it. And so then that's my definition of success, because then education is part of it, good health is part of it, you know, the how you're able to handle yourself is part of it, and even being able to handle failure is a success in itself.
Yes,
So
for
we
sure.
need to change what's the marker
Yes.
for success. It's
Yes.
like, if I
What
get,
is a yardstick?
maybe for you it's 1 million shillings, for me it's 100 million. It's like what works for me.
Yes.
So what I know, I'm like, okay, I am satisfied with this. I have made strides. Or if you take the one step, because it's the same thing with forming a habit. You do small things to be able to get it into your routine. So why don't we do the same thing for success? Why don't we do those small things, tick that box, where like, okay, I've achieved this success. How do I move to that next
And
step?
again, you know, I mean, they are very interlinked, the success and the failure. Because if you look at the successful people, they have many elements of failure. And they give their stories and say so. You know, it's personal stories which they've given, and they said, you know, by the time I got here, by the time, you know, if it's a runner, I ran the first race. I did not get what I expected. I ran the second one. I've had to put in so much work. Anybody, even in your own personal life, if you think about that precise thing that you're proud of, you know, that you say, I'm successful, how many times have you failed in it? How many times have you failed in it? Yeah. So I think that's also something else to think about. And maybe someone can share amongst us, what is it that you failed, but then you eventually found yourself very successful?
The journey of, you know, the journey of failing and succeeding, again, like you said, they're interlinked. I feel like we focus, again, success has many fathers, and failure is an orphan, isn't it? So you're abandoned if you are deemed to fail. But many times, and just like what Esther started off by saying, many times our failure is actually, it's an experiment towards bigger things and good things, not just for ourselves, but even for other people. I feel like we are so focused as a society in different facets, in the church, in school, in academia, in our society, in our home, even in our estates, in our families. We're so focused on who is doing the shiny objects, but never the path towards the shiny object. You know,
exactly.
I want to be on top of the mountain, but no one is talking about how hard it is, how utahema getting up there. So I think we really need to focus on that, because then we also become humble towards success. We also become humble towards the processes, and we become more compassionate, so that if someone is not doing as well as we think, or maybe they wanted to be doing, then we will encourage them and affirm them, because they are making a step towards the right direction. Because otherwise then I'll discourage you and you'll close your shop. I'll discourage you, you shut down your foundation. I'll discourage you and you're like, maybe I should switch careers or something. So I feel like we really focus, we are generally, world over, people nitpick on what is going wrong, rather than seeing what is it, what is the thinking behind, where is this going, you know?
I mean, industries have come up today based on discouragement. They're flourishing industries. If you look at mentoring, coaching, you know, mindset, you know, sort of, you know, mindset stuff. I mean, there's a whole industry based on failing and failure and just
hand-holding.
And because you know, some of us get so beaten up when we fail. Maybe it's sometimes for some people it's the personality. But to me, how I look at it is just being true to vision. If you really don't, being clear on your vision is what allows you to be a bit kinder to yourself. That there's this path that you followed, and it didn't get, you know, you didn't get the results that you wanted, but the vision never changes. It's just that the path might have to change depending on what's going on in the environment, what's going on, you know, internally with yourself. But being true, I think it's important to have a focal point, and you're like, you know, that's the aim that I want to go for. How I get there, nobody's putting any pressure on you on how long you should take to get there. But I think there's a beautiful story in how Violet, because we can be after the same thing. But the way we'll get there totally different. But at some point you'll find that we will merge. We will merge because our thinking will be alike in a particular place. So to me, like, you know, one of my mentors told me, it's not about staying down. Don't stay down if you're beaten up. Just find a reason to, you know, come up again, you know, have a new beginning and forge your way forward.
Guys, I have... Sorry.
I like that you've mentioned, you began with that there's a whole industry that has been created because of the need for people to get handheld. And then you finished with, my mentor said. So I think there's as you do that journey towards overcoming, I guess if it's overcoming failure or if it's working to succeed, it's which voices are you allowing to speak into your life? Of course, yours is the most important. But like, who are you letting have a say in the decisions you're making? If you fail, who do you go to be like, okay, we failed, okay, what did we do wrong? What could we have done differently? Do we test differently? How do we move from here? So who are you letting speak into your life? And if they speak into your life, who are you listening to? Because people look and say sometimes it's noise, and then others it's like, okay, we failed, this didn't work, why don't you try this, let's test it and see. So maybe it's like, who else are you listening to?
That's very important, because now what I was going to say is just something a bit different, and not to blame shift, but many times, even if you like look inside your own life, you have failed, but it wasn't your fault, someone else failed you, or a whole system of things just happened and failed you, and like it's like you are rigged. The success was not for you right from the onset. So how then do we grapple with that or deal with that? Because
I think more so it's to reflect and not let yourself be taken down by what you call failure. Just to reflect and take the lessons, because with each failure there is a lesson. Whether it was you were failed, then that means you need to learn. Okay, this is not the person to go to. If it was me who failed, then where did I fail? Was it the time I did not give enough? If I was reading, was it I didn't push myself a little bit more? So it is to look and pick up the lessons from the failure, because once you do that, then you're able now not to self-criticize. We are a society which really criticizes ourselves. Anything small that happens, you're like, I was very wrong, I was this. You really put yourself down. It is to ensure that you don't keep putting yourself down, because the more you put yourself down, then you keep feeling like a failure. You keep saying that I shouldn't have driven there. The cop has stopped you, police amekusimamisha wa traffic, we know them very well. And then after that, after the hassle with the cop, you keep going, I shouldn't have been on my phone, I shouldn't have been on my phone. You keep that, I shouldn't have been on my phone, is to say to yourself, yes, I shouldn't have been on my phone, and so this is a lesson for me that the next time I'm driving, I'm not on my phone, and move on. So unfortunately, most of the time we are not able to move on. We get stuck in, I shouldn't have been on my phone, I shouldn't have, and for 3 days, 1 week, 1 month later, you're still on.
You're still talking to yourself about that incident.
No, absolutely.
Yes.
I think I would, if I was to talk to anybody today, I'd let them, especially even in the job place, you need to question processes. Because those big books that we are given during induction, and this is what you're supposed to follow from, to the T. But some of these processes are flawed. Maybe they worked in the year 2000. But right now, it's not something that's quite applicable to you. So I think it's okay to question some things that are done and voice your opinion on it. Because you see, you can be doing something, it's just that I forget the quote, but that thing of doing the same thing expecting a different result. It's because there's a process that has been already laid out for us to follow, and it's not producing any results. So really the fault, how can that blame be shifted to you when really you are doing what you were supposed to do?
As per the guidelines.
So it's okay to question status quo and
so
give
it's
your
like,
input.
If I'm getting you right, it's like there are times we say that you're set in a system that's already failed, and so you're expected to pass. You can't. If the system is already a failed system, then it's not going to work. So the system, has to be set in a way that it's lifting you up. It's failing. And systems are so many things. Even parenting is a system.
Yes.
It's all those systems that are within your life. And just like I said, that, if you're a parent, how are you ensuring that your child doesn't keep blaming themselves for failure? Are you the one, really pushing them and saying, you're failed, you've not done correctly, you've not washed your hands properly, you've not eaten your food well, you've not sat on the table well, so the child keeps feeling like a failure, and you keep pushing them down, yet you should be uplifting. There's something, another thing that for me, is very critical, that all the time we want to say don't. Can we say can? Because you see, don't is a suppression. Don't is a suppression. But if I say can, if for example I say don't eat like that, I could say, could you try eating differently? It's two different things.
Yes.
The feeling is very different. Yeah. So it's the don't that suppresses you, and it makes you have that fear of I'll fail, because if someone starts the sentence with don't, it's already negative.
Yeah, sure.
Downhill from there.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
True,
Yeah.
And I think I think people should also give themselves that grace, that especially if you're a first-time parent, you don't know.
Yes.
Like you've read, you've watched, but you really don't know. And children are different. Even if you have your first, second, and third born, they are three completely different individuals. So if you give yourself that grace that maybe my firstborn learnt very fast, the secondborn is a bit slower. It's like how do you extend that grace to them to be able to teach them differently? And so it's the same case even when you're living life and things are hard and maybe you've been trying, you've been failing, give yourself the grace that maybe it's not the right time. Maybe I should be trying something different. Maybe I'm like, I've stuck here for so long, I'm not moving. Sometimes just move. Give yourself the grace to be like, okay, it failed. Let me move to the next thing. It's allow yourself to be able to fail.
And allow yourself to unlearn.
Yes.
Yeah. Unlearn
Guys,
something.
you know, we live in a society where we have to prove ourselves. So even if I fail, sometimes I'm digging my feet in just to prove myself. So, you know, like, what's the psychosis behind that?
Give yourself grace.
It's just the key thing that Esther said, the fear of being judged. You know, that you're just fearing being judged. So you will keep even just holding on to something that's not working. How many people are holding on to marriages that are not working and then they end up being killed? How many people are holding on to jobs that actually not for them?
Yes.
You know, I went to school because my parents said I must do, you know, BCom. Then I got into accounting and I'm in this accounting office and I'm feeling like this is not my job. But I'm fearing if I say that I don't want to be, you know, an accountant, I want to be a hairdresser. It will be like hairdresser, really. So you're hanging on to that accounting job, and what's happening? You're getting drained by the day. Every day you're just getting drained. So even what you are fearing as a failure becomes a double failure.
Yes.
You know, because you don't even perform in the job.
So you're digging your feet in and failing even more than the fear of what you are afraid of.
Yes. So the failure becomes even now, and then the power of the failure grips you, and you sort of freeze.
Yeah. So it's allowing yourself to accept. Maybe it's like work towards getting to that place where it's like, okay, I'm done being an accountant.
Yes.
It's time to start working towards being a hairdresser. So how do I save my salary? Pay for, I don't know, Ashley's, go learn how to make hair, and then start making my sisters, and then my aunties, and start charging them. And then slowly, I think, once you start to gain the skill, see that maybe you can get the same money you are getting when you're accounting, if not more, then you start to transition from that. Because then you're able to move. Because if you don't try, you'll never know.
Exactly.
You will never know. Yeah.
So we embrace failure?
Completely.
Okay.
100%.
Completely.
Embrace.
Yeah.